When I reached for the aspirin in my husband's medicine cabinet at 2 in the morning, my fingers brushed against something that didn't belong there, a small USB drive, tucked behind the bottles where no one would think to look. I almost put it back. Almost. But Robert had been dead for 3 months, and I was still finding pieces of him scattered throughout our Denver home like breadcrumbs, leading to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to follow. The headache that had driven me from bed suddenly felt irrelevant. I stood there in my nightgown, bare feet cold against the bathroom tiles, turning the USB drive over in my palm. It was black, unmarked, and somehow felt heavier than it should. Robert had been meticulous about labeling everything. His office upstairs was full of carefully organized files, color-coded folders, labeled boxes. This unmarked drive hidden in a medicine cabinet was wrong. Deliberately wrong. Don't forget to subscribe to Phoenix Tales and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I should mention that I'm 67 years old, a retired high school English teacher who spent 42 years teaching teenagers about Hemingway and Shakespeare. My life has been predictable, comfortable, and largely uneventful. Robert and I raised 2 sons in this house. We hosted neighborhood barbecues every 4th of July. We voted in every election. We were the kind of couple people called solid. Boring, maybe, but solid. Now, standing in the bathroom at 2 a.m. with a mysterious USB drive, I felt anything but solid. My hands trembled as I walked downstairs to Robert's office. The house creaked around me, familiar sounds that usually brought comfort but now seemed ominous. I booted up his computer, the one I'd been avoiding since his death. My son David had offered to clear it out for me several times, always with a peculiar insistence that made me uncomfortable. Now I wondered why he'd been so eager. The USB drive slid into the port with a soft click. A folder appeared on screen. Just one folder, labeled Falcon. That was Robert's childhood nickname, something his mother used to call him. I'd only heard it a handful of times in our 40 years together. Why would he use it to label a hidden drive? I opened the folder. Inside were dozens of files, bank statements, legal documents, photographs. My heart started to pound. The first bank statement I opened showed an account I'd never seen before, an account in Robert's name with a balance that made me gasp, $847,000. We'd been comfortable but not wealthy. Robert worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm. We had our savings, our retirement accounts, his life insurance, but $847,000 in a secret account? I scrolled through the statements. Deposits had been made monthly for the past 20 years. Withdrawals, too, large ones, always to the same recipient, Elena Vasquez. The name meant nothing to me. I opened another file. This one was a property deed for a condo in Boulder, about 30 miles from our Denver home. Owner, Robert Morrison. Purchase date, 18 years ago. I'd never heard him mention any property in Boulder. We'd never even discussed buying investment real estate. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on the photos folder. The first image loaded slowly, painfully. When it finally appeared, I stopped breathing. Robert stood on a beach somewhere warm, his arm around a dark-haired woman about my age. He wore the smile I thought he reserved only for me. The woman looked up at him with obvious adoration. Behind them, 2 teenage boys grinned at the camera. The photo was dated 8 years ago. I scrolled through more pictures. Robert celebrating a birthday with this family. Robert at what looked like a high school graduation. Robert playing golf with the taller boy. Robert at someone's wedding. Image after image of a life I knew nothing about. A parallel existence that had run alongside our marriage for what looked like decades. The sun was rising when I finally stepped away from the computer. I'd seen everything. The bank statements showing regular support payments. The legal documents establishing Robert's paternity of the 2 boys in the photos, Marcus and Daniel Vasquez. The emails between Robert and Elena, spanning years, discussing their son's college applications, career plans, relationship problems. The deed to the Boulder condo where apparently this second family lived, where Robert had lived part-time. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. 40 years of marriage, 2 sons I'd raised, a life I'd built, all of it now overlaid with this shadow version where my husband had another woman, other children, another home. How had I not known? How had I been so blind? The answer, I realized with bitter clarity, was simple. I'd trusted him completely. When he said he had late client meetings, I believed him. When he took weekend trips for work, I never questioned. When he seemed distracted or distant, I assumed it was stress from his job. I'd been a fool. But I'd been a fool because I loved him. The sound of a key in the front door jerked me back to the present. I quickly pulled out the USB drive and slipped it into my robe pocket. My son David let himself in, carrying coffee and pastries like he did most Saturday mornings since Robert died. "Mom?" he called out. "You up?" "In the office," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. David appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from cheerful to concerned when he saw me still in my nightgown at 6:30 in the morning. "You okay? You look terrible." "Didn't sleep well." I stood, moving away from the computer. "Bad dreams." He set the coffee on the desk. "You need to take better care of yourself. Have you thought any more about what we discussed? About selling the house?" We'd had this conversation 3 times since Robert's funeral. David, who worked in commercial real estate, kept insisting the house was too much for me to maintain alone. He had a buyer lined up, he said. Someone willing to pay top dollar. I could move into one of those nice senior living communities, he said. Make new friends. Have activities. "I'm not ready," I said. The same answer I'd given each time. "Mom, you can't stay frozen in the past. Dad's gone. This house is just going to get harder to manage as you get older." He softened his tone. "I'm worried about you. Michael and I both are." Michael was my younger son, a surgeon in Seattle. He called weekly but rarely visited. I'd always been closer to David, or so I thought. Now, looking at his concerned expression, I wondered what else I'd been wrong about. "I'll think about it," I heard myself say. "Is Michael coming for Thanksgiving? That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." David sat down in Robert's chair. His chair now, he seemed to think. "Michael and I have been discussing. Mom, there's something we need to tell you. About Dad's estate." My heart stopped. "What about it?" "There's a claim against it. A legal claim. We didn't want to worry you, but our attorney says we need to address it." I forced myself to sound calm, confused. "What kind of claim?" "Some woman claiming Dad owed her money. It's ridiculous, obviously a scam, but we need to protect you, protect the estate." He pulled papers from his briefcase. "That's why we need you to sign these documents." They put the house and Dad's remaining assets into a trust. Michael and I would be the trustees. It protects everything from this woman's fraudulent claim. "What woman?" I asked, even though I knew. "Her name's Elena Vasquez. Says Dad made promises to her, owes her money. She has a lawyer, the whole thing. But don't worry. Our attorney says she has no case. We just need to get everything properly protected." I took the papers with numb fingers. "Can I read these first? Have my own lawyer look at them?" David's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. But Mom, time is important here. The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. If we don't have the trust in place before then, she could freeze all the assets. You could lose access to everything, including this house." 2 weeks? Why didn't you tell me sooner? We didn't want to upset you while you were still grieving. We thought we could handle it ourselves, but our lawyer insists you need to be involved. He stood, placed a hand on my shoulder. "We're trying to protect you, Mom, from some con artist trying to take advantage of a widow." After he left, I sat with those papers for a long time. The trust documents were dense with legal language, but I'd spent 40 years teaching teenagers to read critically. I understood enough to see what this really was. A transfer of control. If I signed, David and Michael would own everything. I'd be the beneficiary, supposedly, but they'd make all the decisions. Sell the house, manage the money, decide what I could and couldn't do. The words cognitive decline appeared twice in the documents. In the event the beneficiary shows signs of diminished capacity, that's what they were planning for, or planning to claim. I pulled out the USB drive again, stared at it. Elena Vasquez wasn't a con artist. She was Robert's other wife. Not legally, probably, but in every way that mattered. And those boys, Marcus and Daniel, they were Robert's sons. My stepsons, I supposed, though they didn't know I existed. The question was, did David and Michael know about them? I spent the next week playing the confused, grieving widow while secretly investigating. I found Elena Vasquez's address from the property records. The Boulder condo. I drove past it 3 times before I worked up the courage to knock on the door. She answered with a dish towel in her hands, looking exactly like her photos but older now, tired. When she saw me, recognition flickered across her face even though we'd never met. Maybe I looked like I belonged to Robert. Maybe she just knew. "You're Linda," she said quietly. "The wife. And you're Elena, the other wife." She stepped back, let me in. The condo was modest but warm, filled with photos of the boys and, yes, of Robert. On the mantel, in a silver frame, was a picture of Robert and Elena on what looked like a tropical beach. Both of them younger, both of them radiant. "How long did you know about me?" I asked. "Always." She gestured for me to sit. "From the beginning. Robert never lied to me about being married. He said he couldn't leave you, that it would destroy his sons. He asked if I could accept being second, and she paused, pain crossing her face. I loved him. I thought being second to Robert was better than being first to anyone else. Did you know he died? I was at the funeral. In the back. I saw you. Saw David and Michael. I wanted to scream that I was mourning too, that my boys had lost their father, that I'd lost the love of my life, but I had no right. I was the secret. "You have sons?" She nodded. "Marcus is 26. Daniel is 23. Robert put them both through college. Marcus is an engineer now. Daniel's in law school. They're good boys." Robert was so proud of them. I felt tears burning in my eyes. He never told me. 40 years. And he never said a word. "I know this isn't fair to you." Elena stood, wringing the dish towel in her hands. "But Robert made me promises. He set up accounts for the boys' futures. He put money aside for their weddings, their children's educations. And he promised me this condo, that I'd always have a home. Now your sons are saying none of it matters, that Robert's promises mean nothing because I was never legally his wife. My sons know about you? They found out after Robert died. They showed up here demanding I hand over any documents, any proof of Robert's support. They said I had no claim to anything. When I showed them the paperwork Robert left, they laughed. Said I could try to fight it in court if I wanted, but they had lawyers and money and I had nothing. I pulled out the USB drive. "You have this." Elena's eyes widened. "Where did you find that?" "I've been looking everywhere." Robert said he made a backup, but I could never find it. It was hidden. Seems like Robert was good at hiding things. I set it on the coffee table between us. "Elena, I need to know something. Are my sons planning to cheat you out of what Robert promised?" She laughed, a bitter sound. "Your sons are planning to cheat both of us. They've convinced you to sign over your assets to them, haven't they? For your protection? How did you know?" "Because they tried the same thing with me. Wanted me to sign documents saying I had no claim to anything in exchange for a small settlement. When I refused, they threatened me, said they'd prove I was extorting their father, that I'd manipulated a dying man. That's when I filed the legal claim to protect myself. I thought about David's insistence that I sell the house, about Michael's sudden interest in my well-being, about the trust documents with their references to cognitive decline. "We need to talk to a lawyer," I said. "Both of us. Together." Elena shook her head. "I can't afford to fight them. Robert's money went to supporting the boys. I work as a nurse. I'm comfortable, but I can't match their resources. I can. Robert left me everything, or so I thought. Turns out he left me nothing but lies, but the money is still there, and I'll be damned if I let my sons steal from us both." That night, I called an old colleague from my teaching days whose husband was an estate attorney. Frank Martinez had retired 5 years ago but still consulted on complex cases. When I explained the situation, he was silent for a long moment. "Linda, this is messy. Legally and emotionally messy. I know. Can you help? Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything. And Linda, don't sign anything your sons give you. Nothing. Do you understand?" I promised I wouldn't. The next morning, David showed up unannounced. "Mom, I've been thinking about the trust documents. We really need to get those signed today. Our lawyer is getting nervous about the timeline. I need a few more days to read through everything." His expression hardened. "Mom, I don't think you understand how serious this is. That woman is trying to take everything Dad worked for. If you don't protect yourself now, you could lose it all. David, who told you about Elena? He blinked, surprised. What? How did you find out about her? About the claim? Her lawyer contacted ours. Why does it matter? Because I'm wondering how long you've known. Did you know while your father was alive? The pause was too long. Mom, I don't see how that's relevant. Answer the question, David. I found out about 6 months before Dad died, he told me. He was worried about what would happen to her and those boys after he was gone. He asked me to make sure they were taken care of. David's voice turned cold. But that was before I understood what she really wanted. Before I realized she was planning to bleed his estate dry. Robert asked you to take care of them, and instead you're trying to destroy them? I'm trying to protect my family. You, me, Michael. We're his real family, Mom. Those people are nothing. Those people are your half-brothers. No, he stood abruptly. They're not. They're the children of Dad's mistress. They have no legal standing, no moral standing, no right to anything. But they have Robert's DNA. They have his nose, his laugh, probably his stubbornness. They're family whether you like it or not. Mom, if you don't sign these documents, you're making a terrible mistake. Michael and I are trying to help you, but we can't protect you if you won't let us. Get out, David. What? I said, get out of my house. And don't come back until you're ready to tell me the truth. All of it. After he left, I sat shaking. 40 years of trusting my husband, 27 years of being proud of my older son. All of it crumbling like dust. My phone rang. It was Frank Martinez. Linda, I've reviewed the documents you sent over. We have a serious problem. What kind of problem? Your sons aren't just trying to protect the estate. They're systematically transferring assets out of it. Over the past 3 months, they've liquidated your husband's retirement accounts, sold off stock portfolios, moved money into accounts you can't access. If you sign that trust document, you'll be signing away your rights to even question where the money went. How much? We're still tracking it, but conservatively, about $1.2 million is unaccounted for. I closed my eyes. Can they do that? Legally, they had power of attorney for your husband's medical decisions during his final illness. It looks like they extended that authority beyond what was appropriate. It's fraud, Linda. Your sons are stealing from you. That night, I packed a bag and drove to a hotel. I left no note, turned off my phone. I needed to think, to plan. I needed to stop being the trusting mother who believed her children would never hurt her. The next morning, I called Elena from the hotel phone. Can your sons meet me? Marcus and Daniel? Why? Because they deserve to hear the truth from someone who knew their father. And because I think we might be able to help each other. Marcus and Daniel Vasquez were handsome young men with Robert's eyes and Elena's warm smile. Meeting them in a coffee shop in Boulder, I felt an odd sense of pride. These were good kids. You could see it in how they treated their mother, how they spoke to the waitress, how they listened. We're sorry for your loss, Marcus said. We wanted to attend the funeral properly, to introduce ourselves, but we didn't think it was our place. You had every right, I told them. Robert was your father. Did you know about us? Daniel asked. Before? No. I found out after he died. And I'm sorry. Sorry you had to be a secret. Sorry Robert put you in that position. He was a good dad to us, Marcus said quietly. When he was around. But we always knew we weren't the priority. We were the other family. Well, now you're just family. And I need your help. I explained everything. The hidden assets, David and Michael's fraud, the trust documents, the missing money. Marcus, the engineer, started taking notes. Daniel, the law student, asked sharp questions. We need evidence, Daniel said finally. Clear evidence of the fraud. Do you have access to the accounts? I have Robert's computer, and I found his backup files. That's a start. But we need to move fast. If they realize you're onto them, they'll hide everything. Over the next week, Marcus and Daniel became my unlikely allies. Marcus used his tech skills to recover deleted files from Robert's computer. Daniel researched estate law and built a case. Elena provided financial records showing Robert's regular support payments, proving the boys were his sons. Meanwhile, my phone filled with increasingly frantic messages from David and Michael. Where was I? Was I okay? They were worried. They needed to talk. The trust documents were urgent. I ignored them all. Frank Martinez filed an emergency motion with the probate court. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse with Elena, Marcus, Daniel, and a lawyer I'd hired. David and Michael were already there with their attorney, a shark-faced woman in an expensive suit. When David saw me, relief flooded his face. "Mom, thank God. We've been so worried." "I'm fine, David." "Then why did you disappear? Why haven't you been answering your phone?" "Because I needed time to think, to understand what you and Michael have been doing." The hearing was brutal. Our lawyer presented evidence of David and Michael's unauthorized transfers. Frank Martinez testified about the missing money. Daniel, speaking with surprising confidence for a law student, argued that Robert's promises to his second family deserved legal recognition. David and Michael's lawyer tried to paint Elena as a gold digger, Marcus and Daniel as opportunists, and me as a confused elderly woman being manipulated. Then I took the stand. "Mrs. Morrison," their lawyer said in a patronizing tone, "isn't it true that you've been under considerable stress since your husband's death?" "Yes. And isn't it true that stress can affect memory, judgment, cognitive function? In some people, perhaps. Not in me. You're 67 years old. Isn't it possible you've misunderstood some of the financial transactions your sons have been managing on your behalf?" I taught high school English for 42 years. I read Shakespeare, Faulkner, Joyce to teenagers, and made them understand it. I think I can read a bank statement. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. "Mrs. Morrison, your sons are trying to protect you. My sons are trying to steal from me. There's a difference." The judge, a woman about my age with steel gray hair, leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, in your own words, tell me what happened." So I did. I told her about finding the USB drive, about discovering Robert's secret family, about David and Michael's attempts to pressure me into signing away my rights, about the missing money, the fraudulent transfers, the systematic looting of the estate. "Your Honor," I said at the end, "I understand my sons are grieving. I understand they're angry at their father for the lies, for the betrayal, but their solution is to commit their own betrayal, to steal from both families rather than do the right thing. Robert made promises to Elena, to Marcus, to Daniel. Those promises should be honored, and the money my sons have stolen should be returned." The judge ruled in our favor. She froze all remaining assets, ordered a full accounting of David and Michael's transactions, and appointed an independent executor to handle the estate. She granted Elena's claim for the Boulder condo and established trust funds for Marcus and Daniel based on Robert's documented promises. Most importantly, she made it clear that I was fully competent to manage my own affairs. David and Michael tried to approach me as we left the courthouse. I walked past them without a word. They'd made their choice. Now they had to live with it. 6 months later, I sold the Denver house. Too many ghosts, too many lies embedded in those walls. I bought a smaller place in Boulder, close enough to visit Elena and the boys when I wanted, but far enough to have my own space. Marcus helped me set up the new house, installing smart home devices and a security system. Daniel stopped by weekly to check on me, usually bringing takeout and stories from law school. Elena and I had coffee every Saturday morning, two women who'd loved the same complicated man trying to figure out what that meant. David and Michael sent letters through their attorney. They were sorry. They wanted to make amends. They wanted their mother back. I sent them back unopened. Maybe someday I'd be ready to forgive. But not today. Today, I was busy building a new life, one based on truth instead of comfortable lies. I was discovering that family wasn't always about blood. Sometimes it was about who showed up, who told the truth, who chose honor over convenience. At 67, I was starting over. I'd lost my husband, my sons, and the life I thought I had. But I'd gained something unexpected. Myself, the woman who'd been buried under 40 years of being the good wife, the patient mother, the one who never questioned. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who climbed out of her comfortable delusions at 2 a.m. because finding the truth mattered more than protecting a lie. I was Linda Morrison. I was a widow, a stepmother, a friend. I was a woman who'd been betrayed by everyone she loved and somehow came out fighting, and I was just getting started. Now, tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Phoenix Tales for more stories that'll make you think twice about who you trust.